So yes, we will start for the 4 sessions, and the topic is take care of our coach. And I think all the coaches from INSEP has to be there, because of course it's a passionate and fascinating job, but also with a lot of pressure. So it's really important to take care of them. So thank you so much to you to be with us. Tanja Kajtna, she is psychologist at the University of Ljubljana. Thank you very much to be with us. Please, under your applause.
Hello. We are running a little bit late, so I was asked by Paul and by Howard to be quick. So my presentation today is going to be about the project that we're starting with a few friends. The title of the project is the title of the lecture, so take care of your coach. And it's basically a program for the psychological well-being of coaches. So please take care of your coaches. Thank you very much for your attention. You're not getting off that easy. There will be some theory. I always start when I speak to coaches about what their main tasks are. And there's so many theories about what a coach should do, what his or her competencies should be. I like the ones that start with coaches talking to their athletes. So asking, how do you feel today? What do you want to do? What do you feel about the practice? Which basically starts us off in where the most theories go. So what should coaches be doing with their athletes? And one of the many divisions of the coach's roles go into 6 areas of functioning. Some are the ones that most coaches agree with. For example, practice planning, which is the most basic task of a coach. However, it's one of the most difficult ones. I'm just now collecting student plans for their athletic career. I'm the mentor for student athletes at the Faculty of Sport at my university. And they're supposed to send me the plan for their season. So in case something goes wrong, we can intervene on time. It's sheets and sheets of information. So where they're going to practice, where they're going to competition, what time, what intensity, and so on. So it's a lot of work, a lot of hard work. And it just starts there. Then the coach has to be present at every practice to see what they're doing. The coach has to be able to give feedback, so evaluate the success of the practice. And it doesn't stop there. The coach has to be there for the athlete, so this all-round care for the athlete. I've seen coaches give instructions on math to help their athletes do better. I've seen them instruct on fashion, even though they know nothing about fashion. But if an athlete comes and asks, which pair of pants should I buy, these or these? Well, the coach usually decides these, and afterwards says, I hated both of them, but it's not the point, right? It's also counseling. The coach spends so much time with their athlete. They see them going through school, through first love, through arguments, through listening to the arguments of their parents. So it's counseling also on personal matters, not just about the sport. And the last task, which is always cited and also one of the most difficult ones, the coach has to be there at a competition. So he has to make sure the athlete takes care of their pre-competitive routine. He becomes the model. So a coach who is completely petrified and frightened at a competition does not send a good message, which means that the coach needs to exercise their own emotional control. Also, after the competition, they need to work hard to give a good analysis of what was happening. And they're there to boost the athlete's confidence. On top of all that, most coaches nowadays also basically run the professional team of experts. So they need to be able to speak to us, the psychologists, to the doctor, to the physical therapist. So if you look at the job of the coach, it's something that basically requires also another skill, to be able to extend the 24 hours of the day into the 26 hours of the day. And of course, as this is not done, where do coaches save? On sleep, on taking care of themselves. And if we look at a little bit of basically practical and research evidence. My own experience is that coaches are tired, exhausted, they don't sleep, they work late nights, they're often angry and tired. My research on the PhD was on leadership, basically, of coaches. And when I gathered about 400 questionnaires from about 400 coaches, and before I started giving them the questionnaire, they said, oh my God, another thing to do. I have so much to do. Do I really need to? And they also said, is this going to be about if I am sane or not? One of them said, I'm insane, I can tell you right now. So the coaches are aware of that it's a problem to them, but they rarely approach a psychologist. In my experience, they usually approach me when I've been working with their athlete, and now and then they come to listen to what I'm talking with the athlete, and they say, is this something I could use? Sometimes they have really intense experiences where they see that the psychologist's help could be a little bit useful, but that's rare. I had a coach approach me after he had his epileptic seizure, and nothing was shown basically on any medical exams, but he said, do you think it could be from the stress? Because I'm really, really tired for the past few weeks. So, but this is rare. Mostly they just tough it out. They're just quiet and suffer quietly. Of course, you have a lot of things that are problematic and can objectively cause stress. Coaching business is not something that is secure. I'm sure you know, or perhaps you have had this experience, that the coach was sacked in the middle of the season. So today everything's fine, tomorrow, thank you so much, look for a different place to work. And it doesn't add up to the security of their position, and doesn't add up to making them be able to cope with stress. Do we see that coaches are struggling? Yes, we do. Do athletes see that their coaches are struggling? Yes, they do. One of my athletes once, after we've been working for 5 or 6 years, and reporters would know that we're working, and after they stopped asking, what are you doing with the psychologist, and he never answered, they changed the question. So, what is your coach doing with the psychologist? And he said, well, he's taking care of his sanity. And the coach approached me later, he said, it's true, isn't it? Right? And athletes see this. However, sometimes it's a problem also for the athletes. There was this situation where the coach was having quite a bit of an addiction problem. He would get drunk on the competition and couldn't make it on site when there was time. But the athlete, she liked him. He was, otherwise, when he was sober, he was a nice guy. And she would cover it up. So she would say, he's having a bad day, his stomach is acting up or something like that. So it would cause his stress, and his mental health issues were causing stress for her, so she couldn't prepare. First of all, she couldn't prepare because he wasn't there to allow for a good discussion and preparation of tactics. And the second, because she was always worried, what if they find out that he's drinking and I'm going to be without a coach? So we are used to always looking at the research first. And more and more attention, of course, is being paid to the mental health of athletes. We've all followed what was happening to Simone Biles during the Tokyo Olympic Games. A lot was written about it. More and more athletes are now coming out and saying, I'm having problems with mental issues. It even came so far that in 2019, there was an International Olympic Committee consensus statement. I don't know if you've seen this, but this is a 30, 40-page document which explains about mental health issues, how to treat them, how to approach them, explains the international or the interdisciplinary group of experts that should be involved here. So there's a lot of attention. I have this doctoral student who is now doing a PhD on mental health of athletes, and she's had no problem finding sources, references, literature on this. When I was preparing this questionnaire or this lecture, I said, could you please help me find something on coaches? And I gave her a week, and she came up empty. She said, Tanja, there is absolutely nothing there. So I did my own search and came up with some things. Very few are practical and very few are in research. There were two interesting topics about how we should take care of the coach and how to apply mental health issues. The first one is with a more serious topic, so applying the areas of work-life model. The second one is coaches are people too. You wouldn't believe it, but it's a serious article. You can look it up. It's in the references. However, I also managed to find two articles about research on mental health of coaches. One was with interviews and found that there are 3 risk factors which enhance the problems with mental health. So excessive workload, post-competitive loss, and feeling of isolation. So coaches feeling without any support. And there was a big study on 400 plus coaches that found that, again, lack of autonomy over their coach-related tasks and excessive workload are problems for coaches. While reading for this lecture and looking at stuff, we also found this description of Team USA on their webpage and said, high tension, poor nutrition, and so on must be discouraged in coaches. And yes, we all agree on that. But this is not the first time we've met this. Yesterday, I think it was Veronique who said, you have to find a partner in crime, right? So how about 5 partners in crime? This lovely group of ladies here has several things in common. We're all sports psychologists, we're all psychologists, we're all working applied sports psychology, and we all have a personal history of sport and of coaching. And we've all been discussing for a long time that we have to help also the coaches. And when we were looking for ideas, we came up with this Erasmus Plus project, which basically was granted and was something that I'm going to present today. We called it Take Care of Your Coach. It's a small collaborative partnership. It involves basically 4 clubs. The first one is from Slovenia, the swimming club. The riba basically means fish, as you see from the logo. Then we have a volleyball club from Croatia. We have a winter sport club from Austria, from Kirchdorf, and we have an Italian canoe club from Napoli. So what was the purpose of it? To basically describe a program and try out a program that would help coaches with their mental health and that would help coaches deal with the stress they're experiencing. We said it should contain 4 phases. First is we would prepare a questionnaire because sometimes for people it's easier to check on paper what's happening to them than to say what's happening to them. Then we needed, of course, to develop a set of exercises and a program that we would go through. The third phase would be carrying out the project and, of course, the evaluation. And now I will just briefly try to present what it is that we've been doing. Apart from all the discussions, what should be done and what shouldn't be done, and a little bit of additional research, we started off with a meeting in February this year. We were fortunate enough to be able to do it in person. We presented the coaches with the questionnaire, but of course it's rude to ask people to just come and fill out a questionnaire. We also provided them with an initial set of activities. And before we go into that, the questionnaire looked like this. It's a very simple questionnaire. It was, which are the stressors that you're facing? What are your reactions to stress? And how do you experience stress? Because we wanted to see how much do they know about how stress appears in people. The stressors you are facing with, they were just supposed to select 3, the most obvious stressors. And one of them said, can I have more? Yes, of course, you can write down 4 or 5 stressors. Otherwise, this is a very simplified version of a questionnaire that was otherwise used also in a research that I'll show you a little bit later. In that questionnaire, of course, there was a Likert scale from 1 to 5, because otherwise it's very difficult to compare anything. What we liked when we applied this questionnaire beforehand in a master's thesis of one of the 6 of us that also works at a university, we found pretty similar responses as the people who did previous research on mental health of coaches. So their main stressors were lack of financial means, lack of time for family, lack of motivation in athletes, unpredicted events on competitions, and pressure and own high expectations. And based on these stressors, we were looking for what can we as psychologists do to help them cope with these stressors. And we said, of course, pressure and high expectations, we can teach them how to deal with stress, or at least help them recognize stress. Lack of motivation, we need to teach them about relationship skills, how to motivate them, how to work on communication. Time for family, we can work on organization skills. Of course, there's not much coaches can do about lack of financial means, and there's nothing they can do in face of uncertainty. So we said teaching them about acceptance and mindfulness is also something extremely important. So when we found this out, we said, okay, why not just give them a little bit of what is probably one of the main stressors, regardless of that we haven't yet looked at their answers on the questionnaires. So we first started off with a team building. We send them to a climbing wall. These are the, we have 12 to 16 participants. So it's between 3 and 4 people from each club, 3 and 4 coaches. And we said, these are the people that are going to be meeting over a period of 2 years, so they should get to know each other. We should show them this is also going to be entertaining enough for them to motivate them for the a little bit more difficult stuff later on. And we started off with the basic techniques of mental well-being. I'll show you what the slides were that we've shown them. Of course, we have to introduce relaxation techniques. And we would always give them homework, which they would have to fill out. So to give them something to bring away with and to report on, to create this awareness that I owe them something. So they give me knowledge, I owe them something to at least try it out. The homework for the first session was quite simple. So just do abdominal breathing for a week, for 3 minutes every day, and just write it down. How did it go? For 4 weeks. Simple tasks, what we were learning on this whole weekend. And the theory behind the first week was very simple. It was about stress and control, for example. I'm often surprised at how little people know how we react to stress. You probably know that the majority of what people think is heart attacks turns out to be panic attacks, because we just underestimate how strongly we can react to stress. So we paid a lot of attention in the beginning to teaching them about the stress, about the responses, what's the difference between fight and flight syndrome, and so on. We would also teach them the relationship, the basic CBT relationship. So what we think reflects in how we feel and how we act. We would also ask them, what are the things that you do to manage your stress? So just everyday activities, not just psychological exercises, but what do you do, right? And we would show them techniques. We would show them breathing techniques. This is square or box breathing, which is sometimes, it's also rhythmical breathing, sometimes it's just abdominal breathing. So there's a number of those techniques which all serve the same purpose, to allow people to observe their breathing and to calm it down, to use their whole lung, and to basically establish this oxygen equilibrium that needs to be present in the body for us to function normally. We involved a lot of mindfulness, acceptance techniques. So ACT approach was used quite often, which will be elaborated upon by Daniel a little bit later. And we sent them home, basically, with these exercises. The next time we met was just the experts, and we would evaluate the questionnaire. What did we get from them? But there was something going on in the clubs. People were giving lectures to parents and to management and to the athletes. So we would teach them about how important the relationship with their coach is, how they should be nice to their coach. We held lectures for parents. Every time we speak to coaches, it's how do we deal with parents? I liked what Chris said earlier, to collaborate with parents, not just to teach them or to set them straight. And The next time we met was about what we got in the questionnaire. We discussed how it went. We had this big group of sort of reflective sessions that tried to discuss what did they learn from breathing? Did they use it also after the 4 weeks when they were supposed to do it? 2 of the 6 people in this group that you saw are clinical psychologists, so they also presented their perspective. What is the clinical aspect of mental health? And it was an interesting discussion because there was a lot of silence when they were listening to this. They were comparing their own experience and thinking, is this really happening to me? Because the first time we asked them about their mental health, they were surprised. No? They're not used to being asked how they feel. They're used to being asked, what do you do? But not, how are you? So this time it was far easier because they already knew that it would go this way. However, when they heard the professional aspect, it was still, yes, maybe there's something here to work with. What did we do? For example, this is what the discussion with the clinical psychologist looked like and the raising awareness about mental health. And we did a little bit of work on the organizing skills because their main stressor was lack of work, lack of time, lack of time for family. And we were teaching them, for example, problem-solving skills, among other things. This is a little bit different from the Dewey technique because it has the added 0 point, right? Perhaps you noticed on the slides that we've shown them, we said, just pay attention to what you can control. Don't worry about what you cannot have the influence on, just work on what you can work with. So the first question was, is this that I'm trying to work with, is it under my control? So when the answer was yes, we would go on with a basically very simple manner and very little different to what we all know by Dewey. This is so far. What is yet to come, in February we have a big evaluation to come. We're halfway through, so we need to, we're gathering the responses from the coaches. Do they like it? Are they implementing what they're learning into their daily life? And we have 2 more meetings in March and in November. The final outcome, what we're hoping will be a useful manual on the mental health guidelines for coaches. Something that will be written in simple enough words for coaches to understand, something that will have enough material to motivate the coaches to work on that, and something that I hope will surpass those 12 participants that we're having now, and that we're hoping will go a little bit more widely into the coaching population. What are we striving for? Yes, a happy coach. However, this is not all we want. We want a sustainable coaching career, a coach that can also make it through his entire career, satisfied, happy, and pleased with his work and proud of his work, not burnt out, exhausted, and with a whole bunch of mental issues that he would have to take care of later on in his life. Now I'm done.
Thank you, Tanja. Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Yes?
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. That was very interesting. On your work, you focus on stress as the main problem of coaches. Did you identify some other problems, some other mental problems or limits they might encounter?
Yes.
In my personal experience, if you would ask me what would be my mental limit as a coach, I wouldn't have mentioned stress. Mm-hmm. Maybe isolation, problem of motivation during the COVID phase, this kind of thing. Did you ask your population of coaches if they can identify some other problems, I would say?
It's what we started out with. The questionnaire that I showed in the beginning, they filled it out. And the most common answer with them was also lack of time, lack of organizational freedom, but it's not just stress. They're I didn't show you the whole questionnaire. There's a whole bunch of stressors. They started out, there's also a lot of problems with addictions. There's relationship problems. So there's more. We started out with stress because it's something that we predicted would come up, and it did, but it's not just stress. That's why we have clinical psychologists. And this second meeting that we had was sensitizing them that we can also, that's why we started out with a team building for them to be a good group, so that we can now discuss perhaps a little bit more difficult issues. We're going to go into alcohol addiction because, well, several of them said that they sometimes struggle with, not necessarily on a regular basis, but they say, I drink my way through competitions. So we're going to go into a little bit more clinical stuff as well. That is why we have those clinical psychologists with us. And thank you for asking, yes, but it's sometimes I think important to start with something that's soft enough. So if we try to do a psychotherapy circle and say, what is your problem? We would have a very quiet hour, I think. So we started off with a questionnaire and with something simple enough. And now we're going into, now stop drinking, you person.
Thank you. My coach could not be here for this today, but he asked me to tell him what is really important from this today, and I will definitely talk about your job. So thank you very much, Tanja.
Thank you so
You can
much.
applaud. Thank you very much.